This episode of Tekzilla is sponsored by Domain.com.
SimCity has captured the hearts and minds of gamers for decades, and the latest release is coming to us this March, finally! Joining us to talk about the game is Dtoid's very own Tara Long. Welcome to the show.
Of course, thank you for having me.
So I have to say, I'm like super excited about this.
You should be. It's really exciting. I got to play it a couple weeks ago. I went up to Maxis' studios in Emeryville, and they had people just sort of come in and play the first 3 or 4 hours of the game. You probably know that they had the beta last weekend also, so.
I did get in the beta.
Yeah, what did you think of it?
I was excited about that. I loved it, but it was such a tease. I mean, just being able to play an hour at a time.
Yeah,
I got to
get very far.
No, so I would just basically just make graphs of my
Which is
suburbs,
yeah,
and then work from there. So you obviously had a lot more time to play, but you really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did. It still feels very much like a SimCity game, but they've added so much new stuff. And of course, probably the biggest difference is, of course, the engine that they use now, which is Glassbox, which gives everything this tilt shift camera view, and yeah, it really goes a long way towards sort of making you feel immersed in the game and giving you that very like drunk with power feeling that people play SimCity for. And of course, like they've made a lot of changes just to the structure of the game and how everything works. So now there are all these data layers that you have to consider. So it'll show you all kinds of complex algorithmic data for, you know, like your city's pollution level, the water level, the sewage level. If you don't, you know, build a proper sewage plant, it'll literally show blobs of poo running through the streets.
Sure did.
Yeah, it's like, you can't get that image out of your head easily.
And it makes that sound too, that like zoop,
yeah,
zoop, zoop,
it's
zoop.
really kind of gross actually. But I think the game looks great. Obviously, there's been a little bit of controversy surrounding it with the whole DRM issue and online only.
Yeah, let's talk about Origin for a second, because people were a little bit angry that, you know, you have to be online in order to play, even in the single player mode, of course, which
and rightfully so. I mean, you know, most games don't require this. This is something that EA has been trying to push into a lot of the games recently. And for SimCity, I think it's a little bit more forgivable because they are introducing multiplayer into the game now, so you will be able to visit your friends' cities and, you know, share regions with them and all kinds of stuff. If you don't want to do that, unfortunately, you will still have to be connected online. But it seems like, you know, it seems like the multiplayer is really coming from a good place here. It's not something that they just threw in so they could have this DRM, you know. It seems like it's really going to be a worthwhile function for a lot of people who like playing games with their friends.
Did you get a chance to try out any of the multiplayer, or are they kind of holding that close to home until they release?
We had a little bit of preliminary time with it. They kind of hooked us all up to a LAN, and we played around with it for a little bit. But most of my time was spent in the single player because I was just, I get so sucked into it, you know. Like I don't even know what's going around me while I'm playing SimCity. It's really involving.
Our friend of the show, Norm from Tested.com, actually did this whole amazing rundown of different ways to maximize your city's potential based on existing, you know, housing development plans and ideas. And, you know, does urban sprawl work the best? Does a grid system work the best? Cul-de-sacs? And I found that fascinating. And that's what I love about SimCity, is that because you have so much access to amazing data, and because those data layers are so intense, it really gives you the sense that you are doing like real civic planning. You're having an effect on these tiny little people's lives.
Yeah, it's fun to sort of mess around with those kinds of functions, and I think, you know, the game has a little bit more options in how you can play it. If you want to create like a green city, you can do that, and if you want to create, you know, a high-powered casino city, you can do that also. There are definitely a lot of different ways that you can play, and I think multiplayer especially is going to help towards finding like those other ways to play.
Now, is there anything that you didn't like? Aside from the Origin stuff, is there anything that was kind of like, I could have done without this?
I can't think of any specific features really. I will say that the game is a little bit more overwhelming than it was before, just because there's so many options and functions. But it has a really good tutorial to sort of lead you through things and get you acclimated to it. And, you know, after you get going, you know how it is.
You know, I was kind of disappointed that the Sims in the game didn't look more like the Sims from The Sims.
See, they do more than previous games,
definitely,
but definitely not as much as The Sims. And I had a couple interviews with some of the designers and creative directors there, and I was asking, you know, will there ever be any kind of cross-play maybe between SimCity and The Sims? And I don't know if that's something that they quite have in the pipeline yet, but theoretically, I think could work.
It makes sense
yeah,
to me.
And there's definitely a bigger emphasis on the individual citizens in the city now. You can click on one and open up a little box of information about them. You know, you'll see people complaining, oh, my house is, you know, dirty, or there's too much water pollution in the city. And they really have like kind of little personalities of their own.
You can really dig into like the macro level of what's going on in your city, which is cool. So bottom line, does it live up to the hype? Is it something that we should all be excited about?
I definitely think that this should be on everyone's radar, especially if they are a longtime fan of the SimCity series. I know a lot of people have sort of written this one off because of the DRM. I would just implore that you don't quite do that just yet. The game is coming to PC and Mac eventually. It won't be on Mac at launch, but hopefully then they will allow for some cross-platform play, so you can sort of play with all of your friends on Macs, which is what we all use, of course. And
I have a gaming PC at home, actually, but I want to take it both. I want to have both.
Yeah, you want
at
to
all
have both.
times. I want to have access to it at all times.
I will say one cool thing that I haven't mentioned yet, which I think is absolutely hands down the coolest thing in the game so far. They've added all these color filters to the game, so you can select one of like 20 different ones, I think, like vintage. You can give everything like an orange and teal look.
Oh, I didn't see that in the beta.
And I wouldn't have noticed it in the game unless the guy who put it in the game hadn't come up to me and specifically pointed it out, because it's in the settings. But you can change the color and give it like a little faded, bleached, vintage look if you want. They even have
Instagram your SimCity?
Exactly, and they even have colorblind options also for people who can't distinguish, you know, between colors. So
very cool.
It's very interesting.
So March 5th is the release date.
Yeah, North America.
And what else do you guys have planned coming up on Rev3Games?
We will definitely have a review of SimCity going up, probably the day that the game comes out. And of course, we also have other reviews as well. I just reviewed Dead Space 3 this week. So,
oh, sweet.
Yeah, if you guys are excited about that, be sure to check it out.
You know, we got to get in on some of the SimCity action when the time comes.
You down
I
for
think
Dead
we have
Space
some good.
too?
Yeah, maybe. I'm kind of a chicken when it comes to survival horror,
so we'll stick to the cities.
But maybe if you hold my hand through it, I'll be okay. All right, we've got more Tekzilla still to come, but first, it's time to thank one of our sponsors.
Need a new domain name? Consider registering a new .com. We all know that the .com domain name is the original and the best, and it's globally understood and gives your website immediate credibility no matter what name you choose. And the best place to find a new .com domain is at domain.com. Here at Tekzilla, we like domain.com because they're affordable, they're reliable, and they're easy to use. Plus, domain.com's active social media presence on Twitter at domain.com and their great customer support makes it a fun place to do business. Not enough? What about an awesome coupon code with a big 20% off discount of domain.com's already low prices? All you need to do is use the coupon code Tekzilla when you check out at domain.com. That's 20% off. Big time savings, people. Don't forget to use the Tekzilla coupon code for some love. And when you think domain names, think domain.com. And that's a .com.